Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. For the first time in quite some time, we've got a pretty significant change to one of the main meta perks here in Warzone. That, of course, being Serpentine, which is a semi-controversial perk. Obviously, this and Combat Scout are some of the new additional perks that we've seen in Warzone's lifetime to add in some variety there. And Serpentine has very quickly become one of the most dominant ones in the game. But back with the September 2nd update last week, we ended up seeing a nerf that really changes how effective Serpentine is going to be. Serpentine is now only active while in tac sprint, and their basic description here that they go ahead and type out is, we've updated Serpentine to now only be in effect during tac sprint instead of regular sprint, which obviously tac sprint has a reduced time that you're actually able to use it. Of course, if you don't have auto tac sprint on, it's not something you can instantly activate unless you're double clicking on your sprint button, whatever the case may be. We expect that this change, along with the existing hard counters that are available in Frangible disabling and Vanguard's disable, will result in a more consistent engagement experience and encourage further exploration of weapon builds. So essentially, Serpentine before this update seemed like every time you were breaking armor, it was accidentally active. Whether a player was walking straight forward or to the side, whether they were, spamming crouch to try and get some plates off or whatever the case may be, it seemed like Serpentine was active way too much and essentially causing gunfights to be lost because players could escape so easily due to Serpentine's essentially broken aspects, I would say, right? So this is a pretty significant change that now really opens up the perk meta, at least obviously in perk 1. So today I wanted to break down, are there some new meta perks to really focus on or adjust based on your playstyle? And in my opinion, there absolutely are. This nerf in particular really opens things up to fit more so how you want to play Warzone, rather than if you're not using Serpentine, you're probably not winning, right? So we're here on Warzone Ranked, which gives us a very solid breakdown of how the perks are actually picked out between the player base. What is, being used a ton, obviously with Serpentine, things like Overkill, Combat Scout as well, gives us a really good idea of what is super popular and what's used a ton. Also, as we're going through all this, just want to give a quick shout out to Gamer Advantage. You guys see me wearing the frames in every single face cam video. These are an essential part of my day-to-day setup here. If you're looking at screens for long periods of time, whether you're working, gaming, doing school, whatever, these are the glasses for you. They got plenty of different frame options. They offer prescription or regular lenses. And if you want to get a pair for yourself, code Immortal gets you a nice little discount. Link for that will be down below. But obviously, the only main change here was to perk 1. So this is where we're going to focus today. Clearly, perk 2, perk 3, not really many adjustments here. And it's pretty straightforward. Obviously, Overkill for everyone to be able to grab their 2 primary weapons is a huge pick right here, the highest in the game currently. After that, you'd have Ghost because players want to stay off the radar when there's UAVs. I'm honestly pretty surprised that Restock, High Alert, and Tempered are so low, but I also feel like that might be because they're ones that you can pretty frequently get out of ground loot perks, obviously, whereas Ghost, it doesn't seem like that's as frequent. Obviously, Overkill's not one. And then we have things like Tracker, Tune-Up, Battle Hardened that you can also get out of the ground loot as well. So maybe that's why they're a bit lower. Obviously, for like a secondary loadout, if you're trying to maximize your perks, you'd select something between Ghost, Restock, High Alert, Tempered, and so on. So like nothing's really changing there. Same deal with perk 3, Combat Scout. Still way too dominant. People still use amped, although that's primarily for Cold War and Modern Warfare guns. There's not really a point in using amped if you have a Vanguard weapon because you can adjust the weapon swap speed with perks and rear grips and whatnot. And frankly, perk 3 outside of Combat Scout and amped is pretty useless, even with the buffs to Battle Hardened and whatnot. So really not much change in there. We're pretty much solely focused on perk 1, where obviously, Serpentine is dominating. It's got the highest pick rate, it's got the highest KD ratio, and it's got the highest win rate as well. The reason for that is because it is so good at saving you when it probably should not have been saving you before this nerf took place. But now, obviously, after your armor is cracked, if you're using Serpentine, it's only going to come into effect if you are tac sprinting. Not regular sprinting, not walking, not crouching, not crawling, only if you're tac sprinting, which is pretty limited. So to me, Serpentine now stands out the most to very aggressive players. If you are someone who, 1, plays with auto tac sprint, or 2, someone who consistently uses tac sprint as a movement guide to essentially try and confuse and disorient enemies with movement, slide canceling, so on and so forth, In that case, Serpentine, still a very, very strong perk. For aggressive players, it probably is still the go-to. For my personal playstyle, I am very much so run and gun oriented. I want to constantly be sprinting at the action. Serpentine for me is going to be my go-to perk still. That said, you also now can look at other alternatives as well. Obviously, with Combat Scout being such a popular pick, Cold-Blooded is a very strong choice. It's going to counter Combat Scout, and with that on so many other enemies' loadouts, chances are, at least if you're playing, you know, duos, trios, quads, in most of your gunfights, one enemy on the enemy squad is probably going to be using Combat Scout at least, so you'd have a good chance at countering that. So Cold-Blooded, great, but it's also more of a defensive perk, so, you know, keep that in mind. Double Time, it is curious to me because obviously it's the second highest picked in perk 1, but you'll notice its KD ratio is lower, a little bit higher than EOD, but its win rate also pretty low right there with EOD. So a ton of players are using this, but they're not necessarily finding a ton of success with it. And that's because I feel like people look at Double Time and assume it's going to make all your movement better, and that's just not the case. This increases your tactical sprint duration and then also your crouch movement speed. Now, the crouch benefits, sure, that's fine, but obviously crouching is not a super aggressive, you know, movement mechanic, right? The tac sprint, though, I see so many players who are avid, you know, slide cancelers. They have decent movement using Double Time, and they're completely wasting this perk, because if you are someone who is always slide canceling to maneuver around the map, to get in and out of gunfights, your tac sprint is already resetting constantly because of your slide cancels. That's the broken aspect of slide cancels, right? So extending that duration with Double Time gives you no real benefit. So just a heads up, if you are someone who does slide cancel in game and you have decent movement, Double Time is not a perk worth using. Now, if you don't care to slide cancel, you can't be bothered with, you know, ruining your thumbsticks on your controller or messing up your shift key on your keyboard, whatever the case may be, then sure, Double Time for that increased duration could be somewhat beneficial to you. But if you have decent movement whatsoever, this perk is completely useless in my opinion. Which then brings us to these other ones. EOD, of course, was like the go-to perk throughout the entire first year and a half of Warzone. And even now, after we see nerfs to Serpentine, Double Time is not as good as it was before. Cold-Blooded's more defensive. This still really is not a great perk just because there's not a ton of explosive spam. EOD was a huge deal when you could toss C4s 25 feet, and the RPG was actually considered to be a meta weapon, and, you know, the Rytech was super broken. But now you don't really necessarily run into explosives all that much. Claymores and bouncing betties can be, you know, dodged in a way if you know how to play them with the proning on the betties, and then also you running around claymores in certain ways you can trigger the explosion to basically not hit you. So this is just not really a super useful perk. Quick Fix, though, I think honestly is the perk that benefits the most from this Serpentine nerf. This would be my number 2 choice now, because when you're able to challenge, you know, at a disadvantage, 1-on-2, 1-on-3, 2-on-3, 2-on-4, etc., being able to pop that regen faster when you do start to plate up and whatnot is huge. When you get those finishes and you can get that regen going, that's a huge benefit for an aggressive play style and just general gunfights as well. Quick Fix, to me, as mentioned, is that now number 2 option. And frankly, for, you know, modes like Rebirth and Fortune's Keep, where finishes are, you know, the utmost priority because they're going to give you that information on the mini map, I feel like this is a go-to perk in a lot of scenarios now. Again, it is going to be more playstyle dependent. If you are, again, mad aggressive, Serpentine, still a solid choice. But if you're someone who is very kill oriented, wants to get those finishes and wants to ideally maintain their health, Quick Fix has that nice balance of being very aggressive because it promotes those finishes, it promotes the getting a lot of kills, but it's also a bit defensive as well because it is going to end up increasing your health there, and in some cases allowing you to survive a gunfight that you maybe otherwise would not have been able to. So Quick Fix and Serpentine, to me, looking like the go-to perks after this update. Scavenger, not really worth it with the extra looting. I mean, you get so much out of a body anyways, not really doing anything. Kill Chain's all right, but it's when you can find out a ground loot, and it's just not something I'd ever waste a full class setup perk spot on, just for, you know, for a better chance at a UAV out of a supply box or something. So you could go for them, but I don't think they're gonna do much for you, as the stats clearly show here. But yeah, also something else I feel like is worth mentioning with Quick Fix. You'll notice it's the only other perk 1 perk where there is a green win percentage and KD ratio. So clearly players who are using Quick Fix here are doing very well with it in comparison to some of these others. The KD is significantly higher, win rate's a tad bit higher than Cold-Blooded and Double Time, but enough that it's noticeable, right? So definitely worth trying out. If you have not already, those are the 2 perks I've got my eye on after this nerf. Definitely brings Serpentine more in line with some of these other choices though, and hopefully this video helps you decide, you know, what exact perk you want to run in this perk 1 slot on your loadouts, depending on how you play Warzone. That said, that is going to wrap things up. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, or if you have not already subscribed, every single day I got you covered with the latest news, updates, loadouts, tips, everything going on in COD. You're going to find it right here. So feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day. And I will catch you guys later. Peace out.